Are you like most sales and other professionals who want to grow their wealth faster than what they are currently doing through their company 401k, even with that company match, the stock market, or just plain saving money? Would you sleep better at night if you had the financial freedom to be job optional in just 3 to 5 years through investing in real assets? Maybe you don't want to stop working, but wouldn't it be cool if you could retire a decade earlier than most? And do the traveling you and your family have planned for years while you're still young and can enjoy it? Let's face it, most busy professionals don't have the time or desire to take on more work outside of their W-2 to grow their wealth. On The Wealth Flow, each week we share the stories, the investments, and take a deep dive into the various asset classes that can deliver that accelerated growth to your portfolio passively. That's right, no extra work for you. Instead, we'll put your money to work. Learn what the 95% aren't talking about and join the top 5% of earners today on The Wealth Flow.
All right, welcome to The Wealth Flow. My guest today is Elliot Kallen. He is a leader who brings 30 years of passion and robust entrepreneurial business ownership experience to his elite financial planning and advising practice. He has built international organizations. He's been the CEO of 2 other companies before forming Prosperity Financial Group Incorporated, and is a frequent keynote speaker for charities, podcasts, radio shows, and motivation and leadership and charitable work, marketing, and various other financial subjects. Elliot holds a BA degree in both accounting and economics from Rutgers University. He is the president of Prosperity Financial Group, a top-tiered financial advising firm, and a partner in Prosperity Wealth Management. He has led his organization to be actively involved with many charities, as that is his lifelong theme. Elliot is also the president of a Brighter Day charity. He began it following the suicide of his youngest son, Jake, in 2015. This charity unites stressed and depressed resources with teens and their parents with a goal of stopping teen suicide. The resources of A Brighter Day have touched thousands of families and is having a major impact on the lives of teens and parents. So, Elliot, welcome to The Wealth Flow.
Great to be here, Keith. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, appreciate it. And I always like to really start with, where you grew up and what eventually led you to, in this case, being a financial advisor.
Yeah, so I'm a Jersey boy. I still say coffee talk in the office and water and things like that out of North Jersey. And this is the 3rd, 4th, or 5th companies I've started here. I worked in New Jersey. I graduated from Rutgers. I became an accountant. That was such a bad fit for me. It's funny. My dad told me, don't do it. It's a bad fit for you. And he was right and I was wrong. But what 21-year-old wants to listen to their father?
That's right.
And so I ended up leaving them and starting a packaging business and sold that in 1987 and started an environmental cleanup business. I did some work with the federal government and sold that in 1993. And then my wife at that time became pregnant with our twins. And she was a California girl and we came out to California and I was already looking to get into the financial services business. I had targeted that as an area of opportunity. I had already met with some of the big guns out there like a Merrill and a Lincoln and so forth. And then she brought back to San Francisco Chronicle, told us where we were going to be living in the East Bay. And I kind of laughed. I said, the West Bay is the Pacific Ocean, the East Bay is the Lake Tahoe. This is great. I'm going to be skiing every day. Then, but I didn't realize that wasn't actually accurate. So we moved here and started a financial services business. And then in the late 90s, took that entire service business out from Lincoln Financial, where we were, with their permission. It was a really amicable decision, and created Prosperity Financial Group. Now a $400+ million company, and then 9 years later, started Prosperity Wealth Management, now a $400+ million company. And like you said, with the charity in 2015. So the 40 hours a week is part-time work for me.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. So tell me a little bit about your companies and what's the focus for them?
Well, coming out of the entrepreneurial background, there's no doubt about it that our focus has been targeting entrepreneurs. When they tell you how to start this business, they tell you that you want to go an inch wide and a mile deep. So that means you
Mhm.
want to get every single heart surgeon in Northern California or every single dentist and so forth. But I didn't have any contacts, none. I started from scratch. The hardest way you can start. I don't wish this on anybody, including people I don't like. It's too hard. But what I did do is go after business owners, and I could speak the language and walk the walk and talk the talk. And that's how I started doing a lot of cold calling. I led the office at Lincoln in the word no. Sometimes we had these meetings every week to say, how many yeses did you get? How many no's? And people would say, how do you live with 100 no's a week? I'm like, I don't know another way to do this because I've got little twins at home and they're looking to eat this way. The goal is for them to eat. So I got to do that on that. So
Yeah.
it's been a great ride and it's been a hard ride. And like I said, and I don't wish this really on anybody at all, but I wouldn't change it for the world either.
What are some of the things that you find when it comes to business owners that maybe they don't have with respect to maybe their financial planning?
There are 3 phases to being a business owner, and none of which include financial planning and advice. Phase 1 for a business owner is the startup phase. Sometimes that's the most fun. It's at 100 hours a week. Maybe you have an expertise, or maybe you have a client base, or maybe you just think this is a great idea and I'm going for it. And I'm going to be the next crypto or the next currency, whatever I do. And so they work it all the time, building and building, building. And then they finally get enough money and they go into phase 2, which is now I got something that's worth sustaining. I've got to keep that. How do I do that? I need to get some smart people around me. I need to realize I'm not the center of the universe necessarily. And then during that phase, a lot of them seek out financial advice, good attorneys, maybe CFO for hire if they're not big enough to hire a CFO. And they're going to do that. And that's really the phase that we come in with a lot. But then you get into phase 3 and that now I'm turning 60, 62, 65, maybe even 70. What am I going to do with my company? I have kids. Do they want to take it over? We always try to advise against that because the success of the second generation is so tiny that most second generation people, they want your lifestyle and your money, but they don't want your effort because they don't even know that, Friday night you were cleaning the garbage cans out and you were washing out the tubs of deer and you were doing this and you were grinding it out on Saturday mornings. But they want all your success. And they want the fact that
Right.
you went to Europe for 2 weeks with mom or with your new wife or new husband or whatever you did. That's what they want. And so we talk about the successful part of it. So notice that until they get serious about the money, until they're making enough money, they don't look for financial advice. And
Yeah.
then when they start getting money, they get bombarded like, well, maybe you don't need a financial advisor. You could do this themselves. And then they're now taking the time to do it themselves, competing with running their own company, which is really bad advice for anybody. Do what you do well. And then they're getting ready to leave and they're like, okay, what do I do with my money? What's my cash out? Who can give me good advice? Do I do it as an LLC? Do I do it as an S Corp? Do I do it as a C Corp? What are the tax ramifications? How do I find buyers? How do I get an M&A situation going that's going to be successful at the end of the day? How do I handle the tax situation and maybe stretch those over 5 or 10 years? Lots of good advice. And that's what I brought to the table with these people.
Okay. Okay. I guess give me some examples of that. What you mentioned a lot of times they don't think of a financial advisor or planning, really as they're kind of building that business up. Is that something that you feel they should probably do beforehand, or you feel like they're kind of interacting at the appropriate time, or
Well, I'm
what
a
does that
big
look
fan
like?
of advice. I mean, I'm in the advice business.
Sure.
So, if you want to get good legal advice, ask a lawyer. Don't go to LegalZoom.com. Nothing against LegalZoom.com.
Yeah.
But don't get some good legal advice. If you want to do your own trust, maybe a will, you could do it online. But if you want to get a good trust in place, get one that is bulletproof in your state. And that's why I like using a good attorney. If you're going to do trademarks and things like that, get a patent attorney to do that stuff for you. If you're going to talk about your money, how to get it through the next generation, how to save enough for your retirement, how to save enough for your own company, where do I put my money aside within my company, get good, sound advice. And that's the side that I've always come from. My brother's an M&A attorney, and he's always talking about the bad advice that people get and that he walks in somewhere during this process a lot of times when you're now in front of a judge for the second time. And that's what you don't want to happen.
Yeah, they say the most expensive attorney is a bad attorney. So, for sure.
In the M&A world, and I'm not in that world, I just give advice to business owners getting out. 50% of all deals end up back in front of an arbitrator or an attorney. Half. And
Wow.
you're that's on a national level. You're looking at people, that feel I'm selling my business, I'm selling my baby entity here. My whole life is in this. I want to get the best deal for myself and my family. And in 2 years, are you going to think that you got bad advice or good advice? And then you get the buyer that says, I want to get something good that's sustainable, but in 2 years, are they going to think they overpaid and weren't told the truth? And, two very different sides of the same coin.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. What are some things that that business owners should think about when they are planning their finances? I mean, I guess give me some examples of some things that maybe aren't really common, or maybe they are common, but just that every business owner should really think of.
Okay, that's a great question there. What's good for a business owner? There's a great motivational speaker who wrote in his book, always begin with the end in mind. And so that's not always possible because when you're building your business, you can't even fathom the end of it or where this is going. The picture is so different than when the day you started. It's just completely different. You started in a paint business and ended up in a hardware business. How'd that happen? It just happened. And so if you could begin with the end in mind, then maybe not on your products and your services, but you begin with the end in mind that at some point in my life, I really want to begin to execute what I enjoy doing outside of work. Because if you don't think about that, then you're working at 70, 75, and 80, and you're still doing the same thing. And you haven't transitioned a company to younger people or the next generation or key employees. You've not given that enough serious consideration because you don't have a plan B in your life. And so I sat down with my wife about 10 years ago, and I said, Tammy, I give advice for a living on what do you want to do in retirement? Because the average retiree spends 4 to 6 hours in front of a TV 7 days a week. I don't mean just football season. I mean 7 days a week. They can tell you what's on the doctors and Oprah and Chicago Fire, Chicago PD, and then that show and Entertainment Tonight. And they got it all down. And that's in the evening. That's not even counting the middle of the day. I want to see Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune. When they're crying that Pat Sajak's retiring because they've been watching Pat Sajak for 17 years. And so I said, what do you like to do, in your retirement? How do you see this? And she said, I see travel in our world because we both love to travel. You lived in Europe at some point. You love Europe, but we want to travel more to the US and Canada and south of the border. We want to do that. You love to cook and you love to make great food. I love to eat great food too. So let's go to places that have great food and challenge us. And maybe we can incorporate cooking from the local establishments too. So maybe a cooking class in Italy, France, and Spain would be a cool trip to do. Right? And then we have a wine tasting room. We love to collect wine. Now, those are the three passions we have. We talked about golf, which so many business owners talk about. And we realized we like golf. We don't love golf. So if golf couldn't happen because my knees or my back were shot, could we survive? And the answer would be yes. So then the next question came up is, look, I own a company. I'm in my 50s. Why do we have to wait to do these things in retirement? Why not do them now? So we took the retirement plan and we moved it to a plan for today with the idea that in retirement, we're just going to continue what we do today. That's a business owner talking about how to have a good strategic plan. And then my wife said to me at the same time, how long are you going to do this business? Which means what's your exit strategy? Spouses, I'm a guy, obviously speaking, not a woman. Spouses have an uncanny way of zeroing in on what's the most important topic. And for her, it was, how long are you going to do this business? How long are you going to do it? And it became, okay, I've got to create a transition for myself. What is my transition? And I began to talk to professionals in the M&A world, in the legal world of, okay, what's a strategy for me? And then people suddenly said, hey, Elliot, I've got a strategy for you. And they started to throw me strategies, and more went through that, the more confused I got on what it should be. And then I backed up and got some really good advice from people that are just in the transition world from the financing side of it and finding new buyers. And I said, this is what you need to do. So that's the advice that I give to business owners is what's the next step in your life, which will help you with the next step in your business?
Yeah. And so how and so like in your example, what are some of the things that you've done to try to put yourself in that position where you're able to travel more, where you're able to go do these things that you really would like to do in retirement, but now you're actually building the life to be able to do them now?
That's another great question. So I did something that a lot of people don't do, and that is I hired a team around me in the financial services business that will help do the work for me, that I could delegate everything that I don't do well. I'm terrible at paperwork. You don't ever want me to fill out your form. I could do it, but I'm not good at it. But Janice in my office would knock her socks off on forms and get it right. And then I have people who do the legal side of it and the compliance side of what we do, which is getting bigger and bigger by the day. And other people that just this morning, they said, Elliot, our coffee pot stinks. Why don't you buy us a new one? Go to Costco and buy us a new one. And I said, here's my credit card. Why don't you do research what you want? Go on Amazon and buy it. Don't even include me in your decision. I trust you. And so that's what I've done with my staff. So just a few years ago, I took my first 2-week vacation in my entire life. I only did bookends, so weekends. Now, in a few weeks, I'm taking my first 3-week vacation. My wife said to me, so next summer, is it possible to take off the month of July and live somewhere in Europe for the entire month in an Airbnb and work from there for you? You'd only have to work the evening because that's the morning in California. You couldn't work the rest of the day anyway. And just, we can have a great life. And I said, well, if we can make that work, that's a cool thing. So see what you do, you just expand out your own horizons, because otherwise I'm going to go to a Schwab conference because we clear through Schwab or Fidelity. And I'm going to be one of those white hair old men sitting in the audience at 70 or 80 years old with no hobbies. So I have to keep working. And I don't want to be that guy.
Right. Yeah, for sure. No, that's good. So with businesses, what are you seeing when you're talking with some of these businesses? Obviously, right now, there's just a tremendous number of baby boomers that are kind of getting to that spot where they have built their baby, they've built their business, and they're having to make some of those decisions. How soon before it's time to either pass it on to the children, or as you pointed out, maybe not the best idea to do that, or to put people in place to continue to run it, even as you kind of step away a little bit?
I think you need to for this to be really effective, Keith, I think that you need 3 years of really good planning to execute a really good strategy. And here's why. If you have an S Corp or an LLC that's a pass-through entity, which is the most favorable business to sell tax-wise. C Corps are far more complicated and can be really tax adverse to you. So if you've got an S Corp and an LLC, you are generally running that not to show great profits, but to create great income for you and opportunity. The buyer wants to see all your profits. You want to take the profits home and put them in your pocket. So you're not on the same page. But if you now run your business, and it takes about 2 to 3 years, and say, I'm not going to take as much home, but I'm going to create this amazing balance sheet and income statement that the person who buys this out is just going to be wowed. And it's going to create this huge multiple for the value of my business. You can't do that overnight. It takes at least 2 years of good statements to do that and 1 year of good planning. If you're a C Corp and you're going to sell this C Corp, then you want to make sure you understand those tax ramifications of double tax on your company and then on dividends coming out. And if you don't like that, then you want to have enough time to spread the taxes out from converting with your retained earnings, because that's taxable, and a C Corp to an S Corp. You want to make sure you have enough time to spread out that retained earnings so you are not clobbered converting to an S Corp or an LLC in your first year.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I guess tell me what are the differences in taxes with respect to those? How are they getting hit twice?
Well, let's say if I'm selling my business today and I'm an S Corp, then I'm selling an entity that all that income flows directly through to me in some form of write-off / long-term capital gain, all of it. If I'm an LLC, basically that's true also. But if an S Corp, I'm selling the stock of the company and it stays within the company. So the company receives the profits, not me personally. And that is taxable very quickly at a 22 to what will be a 25% rate to the entity. I still haven't gotten my money out of it. It's still within my entity. For me to get it out now, it comes out as probably a dividend or at a capital gains tax rate of another 15%, maybe 20 at the end of the day. And don't forget, I haven't even counted, I live in California, add another 8% on in California to this whole thing, to both sides. And so I could be taxed 8, 9, 10% more as a C Corp on the sale, maybe even 15% more than I would have been taxed as an S Corp.
Okay.
And then part of that is an asset sale versus a stock sale. But so I don't want to get into the weeds here. Some of that is how you structure it.
Okay. But if somebody is listening and they have set their business up as a C Corp, and they're starting to look on that horizon and say, gee, I probably need to prepare myself for a sale at some point. Do they have the ability to switch up the organization?
They do.
You
can change your organization around at any time. You can't go back and forth, but you can change it, and you can convert from a C Corp to an S Corp. You should definitely talk to a CPA on this, because those retained earnings in your company, when they move to a S Corp, generally are taxable. And so you've already paid tax on them. Retained earnings are after tax profit, and then you're going to make them taxable again. So you want to talk to your accountant about the best way to do that and not be clobbered that 1 year. But that could be a great move if you know that now all this stuff is going to save you 8 to 15, 18% in 3 years from now when you sell the business.
Yeah, for sure.
Short-term pain for a long-term gain.
Right. Makes sense. What about how about as far as the books and the accounting of most of the organizations that you work with? I mean, do they normally need some time to be able to clean things up a little bit and maybe put the accounting the correct way? Or do they typically, when you're visiting with these companies, are they typically already, kind of accounting correctly?
I would sit down with my CFO, my accountant, my controller, maybe not my controller, because I might not want that person to know what I'm doing, but certainly my CFO for hire, my CPA. And I would say, listen, in 2 to 3 years from now, I'm probably going to enter in some type of sale for my company. I want my books to look the very best that they look. What changes do we have to make in running our daily business for my books to have the highest possible valuation? And that's now part of your strategy. So maybe when you were putting your country club through and your health club through and your Sharks and Giants tickets through or baseball, even though when you're putting them through and you're putting through the cab to the airport on your personal vacation, maybe you'll say, I'm not going to put any of those things through anymore for the next 2 years because I want my balance sheet to look as good as possible.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. So you can still do it as you're trucking along with your business, but at some point, when it becomes time to sell, prior at least two to 3 years before time to sell, you've got to kind of.
I think you need 3 years, and 2 of those are really cleanup years.
Okay. Sounds good. And what are some other things that your company does with respect to working with companies that you maybe see that they don't always consider or put consideration into?
Yeah, the biggest thing we do with companies and individuals is we do portfolio management. We build portfolios, and we're very active managers. I'm not a buy and hold kind of guy. I'm very active. My goal is to squeak out returns for clients above and beyond whatever we're benchmarking. But the key is to understand risk for the person. So business owners take risk every day of the week. Yet they look at risk in their business totally that they look at their family and portfolio risk. And so we want to make sure they're congruent. For instance, I know you have a lot of real estate investors here. Real estate investors, a lot of times they look at buying and selling and fixing things up as something they understand, and it's very low risk. And then they look at the stock market as something that's very high risk, and they don't really understand it. Yet I look at real estate investing as, hey, I'm going to buy the place, make sure I know the neighborhood, make sure I'm buying in some place that's going to appreciate properly, depreciate the way I like it. There's a lot of risk out there in today's environment. And what if interest rates remain at the 7% mark for a long time to come. I really don't like the capitalization on this real estate deal. And so that to me is risky versus the stock market is diversifying.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. What are some of the, what kind of investments do you typically, are you looking at? Individual stocks? Are you investing in index funds?
So Jimmy, what we do at our company there, Keith, we do a lot of ETFs and we still have legacy mutual funds that we use. We usually don't buy individual stocks unless we're trying to buy a concentration. So let's say you turn around and you say, hey, I really want to not only own the chip manufacturers, but I want to have an extra amount of Intel. Then we would do that. If we think chip manufacturing is a good way, I could do that efficiently through an ETF, chip manufacturers. All right. So we do that. When COVID hit, we bought more Costco, more UPS, everything that was going for shipping in bulk because we over-concentrated in that area and we were dead right in that area. So we did that.
Nice.
So it's a lot of what we did to make this work. A lot of what we did to make it work.
Okay.
So we do that, but we like ETFs. We like concentrated portfolios a lot. Right?
Okay.
Now, keep in mind that when you're buying stocks, sometimes you're buying stocks not for the right reason. You're buying stocks because somebody says, my friend told me that I should own this stock. And then it goes from 30, the GameStop, like that one.
Yeah, GameStop. Yeah.
Yeah, GameStop. Yeah. There's a good example of something I don't buy for clients. If you want to open up a Robinhood account and do it, go for it. Take your fund money and do that. You want to open up a Robinhood account or a Coinbase account and buy a lot of Bitcoin and Ethereum, go for it. Because it's like $70,000 Bitcoin today. Is it going to go to 200,000? Maybe, but it might go to 30,000 before it goes up to 100. Yeah. And I can't tell you why it's doing that and why it's not doing that. I think it's a product that you want to play with, but you better be aware of that roller coaster ride.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So for real growth money and solid money, that's what we're doing. And we also buy, fixed income products too, because sometimes that fits the core portfolio. What I don't buy is I don't buy passive income passive indexes. I don't buy the S&P 500 because if I want to buy the S&P 500, I'll buy it through an options program because I think I can squeak out more than the S&P 500.
Really? Okay. Yeah. For the audience, can you explain the difference between buying like through the S&P and buying through an option program?
Okay. So when you're buying, let's say the Vanguard S&P, okay, you're buying the Standard & Poor's 500. It's heavy weighted based on the largest companies. And that means the top 20 companies make up almost 70% of the returns there. So you're really not buying 500 companies evenly weighted. And I'm not a fan of 500 evenly weighted companies anyway. But the S&P, which has been great in the last few years, and it goes through ebb and flow, we're kind of beginning to hit that it's beginning to get flat again. And maybe it'll go down a little bit. And that being a stock picker is a better move in the future. And it goes through, like I said, ebb and flow on that. But if I want to do better, and by the way, that includes dividends, which make up 20, 30% of the S&P 500. But if I want to beat that, I could do an option program on the S&P. Now, granted, dividends aren't included, but I could do option programs weekly. So I'm buying for an option to expire in 30 days, but I can buy them and sell them weekly. Okay. And the more volatile the Standard & Poor's 500 index is, the higher my options, the more money they make. The flatter it is, the worse it is. So in volatile markets, I can kill the S&P. And in flat, slowly upgraded markets, the S&P is going to beat me.
Okay.
So you got to know your market
Very
a little
interesting. Bit. Yeah, for sure. And tell me a little bit, Elliot, if you don't mind, why don't we switch gears a little bit? I'd love to hear a little bit more about your charity. I'm very sorry to hear about your son. I've got a dear friend of mine that, surprised all of us unexpectedly with suicide. And so just, I guess if you could maybe tell us a little bit about that and what what the charity does.
I'd love to. Thank you for asking about that, Keith. We started this at the end of 2015. Jake was a sophomore at the University of Montana, walked up to a highway, jumped in front of a truck, took his life, no drugs, no alcohol. We were frantically looking for him because his phone was off. Federal Express showed up with a 6-page suicide note. And in the suicide note, it said, "Mom and Dad, I've been thinking about this for a long time. I never would have told you how I felt. I never would have asked for your help, and I never would have taken your help. And I read that 6-page note up and down, all the way up to Montana, over and over and over when I was in shock. You're not in mourning, you're in shock. And on the way back, I really focused on that one paragraph that I just told you. And I turned to his mom and I said, we have to start a charity that's going to help families not go through this devastation and destruction that we're just starting to go through.
Mhm.
And we started, my wife and I started A Brighter Day with the intent of creating resources on stress and depression with the goal of stopping teen suicide. And it's not changed since then. So if somebody were to go to our website at abrighterday.info, they would see resources mostly for parents, but for teens, a teen survival toolkit, tons of stuff for parents, how to parent better, how to ask better questions, how to not use the cell phones during dinner, turn them off, how to be out in the car with your teen without a cell phone and learn more, things like that.
Yeah.
But that doesn't work for everybody, especially for teens who don't like to read. They like to text. They live in that social media texting world. They've got more calluses on their thumbs than I have on my hands. And so they're texting. So we created a 24/7, all 50 state texting program just for teens. And every teen, 30 new teens go on in a month. Every teen within 5 minutes texts the same question that's going in all 50 states to a trained professional. And that is, am I the only one feeling this way? Because they're isolated and lonely. Now, you know, and I know that texting help doesn't always work. Sometimes they need somebody. So if your teen comes to you and they're cutting themselves or they're saying, I'm thinking about hurting myself, you're going to do something about it. And you're going to call local counselors or get help from your school or somewhere else. And you find out that the average wait time in the United States is 6 to 10 weeks to see a live counselor. And your teen's telling you they want to hurt themselves and you got 10 weeks. That's a lifetime.
Yeah.
So we created a Zoom program, 24, all 50 state Zoom program for teens and their families where they can begin getting help within 7 days, not 7 weeks, but 7 days. And it's 50 minutes, 50, with a trained, state supervised professional, licensed professional in that local state. And they could talk about stuff, and the parent can be on, the teen can be on, both can be on. It doesn't matter, whoever needs to be on this. And we wanted to set it up where no parent ever has to decide between feeding their family, because maybe they have other kids, and getting their hurting child counseling. And these demographics proved that within 90 days, most teens are out of crisis mode. So we pick up the counseling sessions, which are about $100 to $125 a session. We pick them up for 90 days, 3 months for the teen in crisis, which is amazing too, if they go through the website at brighterday.info. All right.
Okay.
So we're doing that, so many things. And then we give referrals to inpatient, things like that. Massive amount of fundraising that we have to do. We've got a car show coming up. We've got a golf tournament coming up here locally. We've got a concert series coming up with professional concerts to raise money. And if that's not enough, we've given out about 20 college scholarships to teens who could write about depression and how they've dealt with it.
Wow. That's great. That's
So
great.
it's amazing. We're touching, Keith, 4,000 to 6,000 people, families, contacts, teens a month now. A month.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Good for you. That takes a tragedy and just really kind of, makes something very, very positive out of it. So, congratulations for doing that. That's amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What, Elliot? I've got a little bit of shortage of time, but I want to make sure that everybody has the ability to reach out to you. If you could let everybody know if they'd like to work with you on financial planning, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Right. It's portfolio planning, financial advice, and it's Elliot, ELLIOT, at prosperityfinancialgroup.com. The website is www.prosperityfinancialgroup.com. And my cell is 510-206-1103. And I'm on the West Coast. So I've gotten some crazy calls at 4 a.m. So I try to remind everybody I'm on the West Coast.
Right. No, that's a good idea. Good plan. And if you could maybe just one more time, how can folks find more about A Brighter Day charity?
Great. It's abrighterday.info. .org works also. abrighterday.info or org. And I'm at Elliot, ELLIOT, at abrighterday.info. Same cell number.
Fantastic.
Either way.
Fantastic. All right. And then I've got two other questions that I ask every guest. And so if you got just another couple minutes, I'd love to ask you those questions.
Great. Go ahead, Keith.
All right. Number one would be, if you were to give somebody advice that maybe they're just starting out their financial journey, what advice would that be?
I would say that, let me give you the advice that my parents gave to me, even though they didn't mean to, or maybe they did mean to. They're not around that I can ask. My father was a part of the greatest generation. He was born in 1915. He went through the Depression, went through World War II. And his advice to me, he was a small business owner. His advice was nothing replaces hard work. You can never make up for hard work. So if you want to be an entrepreneur, make sure you're putting in the hours that it requires. And then my mother's advice to me, who was an Auschwitz survivor from Europe, was you could do better today than you did yesterday. Drive yourself to do better every day. So when I come to work every day of the week, my goal is to do better than I did yesterday. And tomorrow I'll do better than today. Those are great pieces of advice. And the third would be what I said earlier to show is seek out professionals and make them your strategic partners.
Yeah, that's great. Three big nuggets there of just fantastic advice. So appreciate that. One last question for you, and that is any book recommendation. It doesn't have to necessarily be financial planning, but just something that's been impactful that you've read recently.
Oh my goodness. For me, The Richest Man in Babylon has always been a great book. That's a really old book, The Richest Man in Babylon, The Greatest Salesman in the World. Those are two really great books. But if you're an entrepreneur, I'm going to do a little plug here, if you don't mind me, Keith. I have an Amazon bestseller out right now. It says it is called Driven. I'm going to do the real plug here. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
It's Driven by Elliot Kallen and Adam Torres. And it's an Amazon bestseller. I can't trademark the word driven. There are too many books called Driven out there. But if you write that Driven by Elliot Kallen, you'll get to it. I don't know how many tens of thousands of copies have sold because it's a bestseller, and I don't really know because all the proceeds go to the charity. I don't see any checks on this at all. And that's okay. But it is not about mutual funds and investments and buy and hold and economic timelines. It's about entrepreneurship and leadership, because you are both in your company. You are the key entrepreneur and you are the driving leader. And if you don't accept both of those, then the company will drive you instead of you driving your company. And you'll end up not being part of your company. And so you really want to change that.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, it's great. I'll have to get that one myself, Elliot. So appreciate that.
Keith, you can send me your email address. I'll mail it to you. I promise.
Oh, perfect. All right. Sounds good. Look at that. Got a free book out of the deal.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate being on the Wealth Flow, and sorry we're having to cut it just a little bit short here today, but really was impactful, and I enjoyed our time together.
Absolutely. I love being on there, and I can't wait to put it as part of our own website.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you.
Being that you're still here, I trust you found value in this episode. I personally wish I would have known these guests and strategies when I started my wealth creation journey. Go to wealthflow.capital to subscribe to our newsletter. And as a free gift, we will send you our quarterly market report and the top 10 things to look for in an investment opportunity. Take a minute to give our show a rating and review. Help us reach 1 million professionals by subscribing and sharing this episode with someone you know who could also find value in it.